Cool. In that case, I'd like to welcome everyone who's attending this live, especially our guests from Greece and Finland. I'd also like to welcome our hosts from Malleus who are giving the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today and for giving this presentation. And yeah, I think I'm just immediately handing over to you. If there are questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. I will read them out loud and then you can answer them.
Yeah,
Let's
thank
go.
you. Let's go. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and to share some reflections with the Dublin HEMA Club and all of you here. Hi, we are Eleonora and Rodolfo, and we are respectively the creative director and founder of Malleus Martialis. Rodolfo brings decades of experience as a swordsmith, historical fencing scholar, and reenactor. On the other hand, I combine my love for arts and beauty with research and design, shaping the creative vision and helping steer key operational decisions. Together, we craft historical training swords that balance accuracy, handling, and narrative depth. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we'd like to explore the concept of what we call the living blade, and now it comes to life. This expression has a dual meaning for us. On the one hand, it refers to the sword as an object rooted in historical design, yet shaped for contemporary practice. On the other, it describes the feeling a well-made sword imparts in the end, the ability to move with presence, agility, and coherence. It's something built to respond, still today, to martial and sport intention. This isn't a product pitch or a definitive manual. It's a reflection drawn from over a decade of working with historical and modern swords, observing how they work and how they can be transformed in more than just an instrument.
Okay, let's start with blunt replicas versus training swords. At Malleus Martialis, we often distinguish between two categories of swords, those made for collection and those made for competition. So both are blunt due to the constraints of Italian law, which currently prohibits us from producing sharpened blades without the appropriate authorizations. Their purpose, construction, and dynamic behavior diverge significantly. A collection-grade sword is our attempt to pay tribute to historical fidelity. It may have a finely profiled edge of 1.5, 1 millimeter, a tapered but not piercing point, and features that closely echo original weapons we had the honor of examining or reinterpreting. These are rarely suitable for fencing competitions. The HEMA sword, as we interpret it, is a conceptual derivation. We strive to retain the original proportions and geometry, but we must make room for durability, safety, and repeatability. And these are not minor tricks. They affect how the sword behaves. So the challenge is, how can we design a training tool that still feels like a living blade? Not just revived in appearance, but alive in your hand, in the bind, in motion. We believe it begins by treating the sword as a system, not a list of parts, but an interdependent whole. The pommel, grip, crossguard, and blade shape each other. Now let's take a closer look to that anatomy.
Elements of the sword. The sword is constantly evolving as it adapts to material and symbolic needs as well as functional ones. The heterogeneity of the forms according to the reference period has made a plurological classification necessary, useful for orientation. However, the anatomies are so varied and sometimes promiscuous that the system is to be considered open. Around the mid-14th century, the first side ring was added to the crossguard to protect the index finger that controls the sword, gradually becoming more and more complex with the addition of bridges, small bridges, arms, and branches, up to the 17th century cup. When we speak of the sword, we often split it into four main structural elements: the pommel, the crossguard, the grip, and the blade. It's easy to list them, much harder to understand what they actually do, especially when they are working together. The pommel is misunderstood. It's not there to cancel out weight. It shifts the center of rotation, affects how vibration travels down the blade, and dictates how your wrist and palm interact with the weapon. Its shape, mass, and even material influence how much the sword talks back to your hand. Not all pommels are made the same way, and depending on the taste of the time, function, and dynamics, they change in shape, materials, decorations. They are the first visible part when the sword is sheathed and carried at the side. Here you can see a Viking-era pommel, a late medieval pommel cast in copper alloy, most probably hollow, a crystal rock pommel, an iron hollow disc pommel, and the gilded and enameled pommel of a very precious sword dedicated to St. George. The crossguard is more, let's go, head. The crossguard is more than a hand stop. It affects the geometry of fencing, how you close lines, and how you manipulate leverage. What happens when you bind? You see the three different types here, and how this innovation can affect your practice and defense. Surely, while the cruciform is obviously the oldest and provides a basic protection, the transitional one adds forward fingers protection, and the complex develops a lot of branches and rings due to the evolving fencing style up until becoming the closed cup. The grip is where it all comes together, or falls apart. It's your only real point of contact. The length, the section, the diameter, the texture, they all dictate how you move the sword in your hand. A grip that supports nuanced pressure between your fingers is a grip that supports better fencing. Unless you wear bulky gloves where the sensitivity is not that high, but the anatomy and length still count. In the slide, you can see the three construction methods. The sandwich method, where two sides are shaped and recessed to welcome the tang. The bore-through method, where the full piece of wood is drilled and then the tang is heated, allowing the piece of wood to be inserted. And the scales method, where two scales are usually drilled for rivets and fixed upon the tang. In the modern times, we normally prefer the sandwich method, or we also make use of 3D printers to achieve a bore-through construction without the heating, especially for sport and HEMA swords. So new technologies and old technologies together make a good partnership. The blade constitutes the core of the weapon. Its profile and cross-section determining cutting ability, trust in precision, and mechanical stiffness. The balance between profile taper, distal taper, and cross-section geometry defines the sword's suitability for the diverse fencing techniques. And then we get to the mass distribution, where the sword is a whole. This is where many replicas fail, because making something look like a sword is relatively easy. Making it move like one isn't, and is where original artifacts can help us trace a way to interpret the modern HEMA sword correctly.
Okay, let's go to interpretation of the sword. HEMA emerged from the desire to study and revive historical martial arts, but the reality of practice has diversified. On one side, we have martial research and the attempt to bring the treatises back to action. On the other, tournament-oriented system with rule sets and performance metrics. They are not inherently incompatible, but they push in different directions. Sport introduces constraints, rolled or thickened tips, and defined flex. It also introduces incentives, speed, points, wins, that shift priorities. Over time, we have seen a tendency for training swords to be adapted for these demands. Ironically, this has sometimes meant increasing weight or flexibility to satisfy competitive expectations. But this isn't a complaint. It's just a fact of evolution. But it means that the HEMA sword is a modern construct shaped by both scholarship and performance. And in many cases, that performance is bound to the dynamics of the tournament scene. That scene, however, is neither fully standardized nor neutral. Some choices emerge from communities of practice. Others are shaped by sponsorships, production partnerships, or shared interests. That's not necessarily wrong, but it does complicate how souls evolve. Now, it's worth reminding ourselves the goal of martial training is not the same as the goal of competition. A martial exchange is an exercise in structure, precision, and timing. A tournament match is a test of adaptability and control under pressure. That distinction matters. It changes how you move, and it changes what your blade should do. And just like today, in the past too, there were swords designed specifically for training. Artifacts exist, side swords with reinforced tips, feather swords with distinct reverse tapers. They weren't designed to survive battle. They were built to learn, to teach, and to compete. And that is our lineage.
Here you can see two examples, one from the Victoria and Albert Museum for a rapier and dagger with a baton at the tip and flat blade cross-section. Below, there's one of the two practice Federschwerter, always with a flat cross-section and a reverse taper. Just to be clear, no copyright infringement or commercial use is intended here. Anyway, this interpretation is not betrayal. It's what makes the sword usable. A good simulacrum doesn't just look right. It feels coherent. It behaves in ways that help you train. And that's also where the practitioner comes in. A tournament fencer might choose blade that gives them speed and control. A researcher might prefer one that channels the original gestures with fidelity. Both are valid, but they are not the same. And it's important to recognize that the HEMA sword is not a fixed category. It's a spectrum of choices calibrated for use. No historical treatise tells you how to make a sword. Instead, we are left with fragments, illustrations, fencing manuals, inventories, and most importantly, original swords. These fragments don't make a blueprint. They invite interpretation. That's where the concept of the simulacrum comes in. At Malleus, we have developed our own methodology. We begin with good design bound to safety. That's non-negotiable.
Let's step forward to how we make a HEMA sword. Well, this is quite interesting. Making a HEMA sword is not a linear process. As previously mentioned, it's a constant negotiation among authenticity, performance, safety, and production reality. At Malleus, we navigate this negotiation every day. Point 1, design choices. Each sword begins with a purpose. Is it for competitive sparring, for historical reconstruction, for stage combat? But the answer shapes the geometry, the fittings, and even the assembly system. We always begin with proportion, drawn from typologies, originals, and our own library of measurements, but proportion alone isn't enough. The blade must behave, not just appear. Point 2, take the edge, for instance. A collection sword might have a 1.5 to 1 millimeter thickness at the edge. It would be thin, elegant, but not safe for sparring. A training sword must be thicker, sometimes beyond 2 millimeters at the tip. That changes the distal taper. It changes the weight. It changes everything. So we adjust, we analyze, we build. Point 3, historical versus efficient. Some blades are reconstructed directly from originals we have studied. Others are interpretations, informed and plausible. The challenge is not pretending that every training sword is a museum replica. The challenge is making sure it behaves with purpose. We have maintained 2 production lines for years. Our sport collection, but it's modular, repeatable, and our Armoria collection, which includes blunt replicas and interpretive reconstructions. The sport line supports the Armoria. The Armoria keeps the sport line grounded in history. They are interdependent. Let's talk about the modular sword system. We introduced it in 2018, inspired by 20th century sabers. I remember Eleonora seeing one with a threaded core and an integrated bushing and thinking, there's something here. We refined the concept, adapted it to our needs, and implemented it. Since then, others have followed. We don't mind. If an idea helps the community, it deserves to spread. As long as the ethics are clear, influence is healthy. Prototypes and production. Well, start to say that we didn't start as a structured company.
Not at all.
No. We had no business model, no automation. We possessed a few tools, a shared idea, and the will to learn. We built prototypes by trial and error. Some broke, some worked, some made no sense until years later. Over time, we built processes. Communication became central, both within our team and with our clients. We realized that a sword is only as good as the people who use it and the dialogue around it. And that's why we test. That's why we adjust. Now, for the workshop practices, our space is small, less than 90 square meters, but we organize it into clear zones. Some operators handle blade shaping, others focus on guard fitting and handle preparation. The more experienced collaborators handle critical stages like tapering and assembly. Eleonora handles design. Sometimes she designs alone, sometimes she works with CAD specialists. We cut most parts via laser, then shape and clean them manually. We never weld blades. Blades are made from a single piece to maintain integrity. But we do weld guards, especially the complex ones. Pommels are usually turned. Some are cast, especially in bronze or brass. Guards are both cast and welded from shaped laser cuts, depending on the model. Blades are ground in stages, then rounded. We check tapers and flex along the way.
Also, organization is very important in our workshop because we are 6 in total. So to sustain a smooth production process, we need to be organized in every step. And it's not that easy, but with trial and error, you can do it. We can do it.
We have done it.
Yes, it's been 10 years of this. And as Rodolfo said, when we started, there was nothing. There was not the right experience. There was not also the right education, because I come from arts and he comes from medicine school. So we have a very different background from the business area. And so we had to make our hamsters work a lot through the years to find the right solutions along the way.
So in the end, we have the assembly and packing. When we assemble, it's not just mechanical, and as Eleonora said, it's musical. We are testing for integrity, feedback, for inertia, for movement. With standardized sorts, it works most of the time. With bespoke projects, it's harder. But we have got some experience, and when it works, it's unmistakable. The sword responds. It becomes a living blade. Packing seems a very boring part of the job, but there we have another quality control. And you have to be a fast learner to apply our precautions with packing. For example, modular swords are checked and then disassembled and packed differently depending on the destination. If the sword has a long way to its owner, packing is reinforced. So, now we have chosen to do one thing, and we hope you don't mind. Before we close, you get a handout. It's not a test, it's a prompt. A way to look at your sword with new eyes. There are some questions now. Try to answer to yourself and then maybe even in the chat. And let's see. What do you use your sword for? What kind of blade geometry does it have? Is it more cut-oriented or thrust-oriented? Is the hilt comfortable? Do your gloves fit the hilt? Is the grip of the right length? How does it bind? Is it long or short, and how this affects your actions? Is the point of balance affecting how you feel the overall weight? How is the sword guiding your body to move with it? What kinds of plays does it suggest? Well, try to answer to yourself and then let us know.
You can use this worksheet for each sword you have, and also you can try to do this exercise in company of your fellow fencers in the club, because it's very interesting to see how subjective the answers to these questions are. In conclusion, the more you observe, the more you learn. Of course, as I said, sensitivity comes with practice, and it is always a very subjective experience. But the more you learn and the more you ask and understand, that's how growth works. And thank you to you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, you two. This was a great presentation, and I think we all learned a lot. It was super interesting. We already have the first question for the Q&A, and I encourage everyone to put their questions in the chat. So the first question is, What is your opinion on the trend over the last few years that swords, especially in long swords, are becoming longer and lighter?
About lighter, I think we are very, very in a good position because 10 years ago when we started, we made immediately light swords, light long swords. And then one of the reasons why we shifted our production to side swords and rapiers was that our long swords were deemed too light for the environment and they broke a lot. So
we must specificate something.
Yes, absolutely.
Because as you can understand, in different countries have different rule sets in federations or organizations, and so tournaments provides you with a range of measurements that is quite varied.
Yeah.
So you have the possibility to have a competition where two long swords of the same length but with a different span of weight, something like, well, in Italy we have a rule set that allows you to compete in the same tournament with a long sword of 800 grams until 1 kilogram and 700 grams.
Yeah, but not for longsword. For longsword is from 1 kilo and 4 to 1 kilo and 7. That's by the way,
yes,
20 swords. That's by the way a lot of range because if you use a sword of 1.7 kilos against a sword that's 1.4, it's a good play, yes, because the lightest sword will behave differently, but also when they meet themselves, there's the risk of breakages and damages to the blades. So this is something to take into account.
In my opinion, there have been some understatements, I think, about the class of fighters. I mean, you have to distinguish between not gender, but between the weight class, as in other sports, other disciplines. You have people that are on the same weight. They are currently challenging together. So if you have the same range of weight for the athletes, then the same kind of sword for them, so same specifications, then you can have a sport that is qualified as equal and not something that is maybe tweaked to the better practice of the one or the better shape and how can I say? It doesn't matter if you have a lot of strength or a lot of agility, but if you are on the same category, then it is legit to think that it is correct. If there is a distance between these categories, well, sometimes I don't see the point in a competition like that. I've seen several competitions in my life, and well, they were not so fair sometimes because, well, they were okay. I'm very fast. You are very big, and well, let's take this to another perspective. If I have a blade that
it's equal to
yours,
that's another point.
That's
of course.
another point.
For example, the best thing I could think about this also beyond the same weight, for example, is the same sword. if two fencers compete in a competitive environment and tournament, they should possibly, and they might have possibly the same sword, same weight, same length, and to finally respond to the question about the lightness, we are very agree. About the length, it depends, because longer, yes, it gives you a competitive advantage, of course, but also you have to consider the leverages of the fencer that is handling the sword itself. So that's the long answer to this question.
That was a nasty question, but I hope
So generally there are advantages to it, and you are generally of the opinion that in tournaments people should have approximately the same kind of sword when fighting each other.
Yep.
So it probably makes
Absolutely.
sense to supply swords to the fencers instead of letting them bring their own swords to make it more fair.
Exactly. Absolutely.
If you
Absolutely.
want
Okay.
standardization and if you want to make a sport based on a standard, well, that defines the sport itself. If you have think about several other sports that requires something that must be base ground rule for everyone. So you have to have
In Olympic fencing,
in Olympic
yeah.
fencing, it's like that. But I was thinking about even in not competitive like martial arts or like that. Well, you have to have in basketball, you have to have that ball that's equals for everyone.
Yeah.
So the basket has the height of the rims, it's equal for everyone. So you are not going to have something different because your federation is 5 centimeters higher, so it's okay for them to have it while your opponent does not have it. But well,
Yep.
that's not coherent, I think. But that's my
That
opinion.
makes sense. Let's move on to the next question. It says, your swords are beautiful. Do you take custom orders, custom pommels, crossguards, etc.?
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes. And yes, we take custom orders, but only if they are bespoke projects from RAF. What does it mean? That for standardized products, right now we have not the production capacity to take mini customizations or modifications to our standard models, while if you commission a sword from RAF, then we can customize everything, because it starts from an original design, and then we move forward through the feedback and the meeting with the customer who demands special features and of course custom parts.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. How much experience do you have yourself using your swords? Do you regularly test the swords you make, or do you mostly rely on feedback from others?
Well, thanks for the question, Miko. I will try to answer to this. Well, I'm a senior instructor at the Scherma Storica Firenze, and it is an association where, well,
A club in Florence.
a club in Florence, where, well, we are two of the founders. So we train there. I still do that, but Eleonora nowadays, well, she follows other interests. So I am
for the moment,
for the
because
moment.
I'm waiting for the side sword class to come back.
So well, I can answer to you, Miko, that I test my souls.
And also the club
regularly.
members.
And so the club members of Scherma Storica Firenze.
And also we rely on the feedbacks from, of course, customers and the practitioners, because they can catch the nuances we have not done yet. So that's great both to use them and both to hear what's the external experience, because you also have to consider always that we can be biased in some way.
And that's the meaning, because she's telling you that because we have a lot of acquaintances and even friends that are fencers, historical fencers, and we are always very eager to let them try our swords before having a final bias with them and not with ourselves alone, because of course, as Eleonora said, we can be biased by our own perception, but when you have a bigger range of opinions, you have the possibility to understand better what maybe you have missed in a good way of thinking. I mean, you're not thinking, oh, it's good, it's good. No, no, no. It's just like, well, for me, it could be nice, but maybe for others, it could be not so nice.
For example, as I said before, with the worksheet, the feeling, the sensitivity is very subjective. For example, when we work together and we make a sword, bespoke or standard, Rodolfo is very strong. So, of course, he's also a man, so he has a structure different from me. And for example, when we sense the flexibility, not by the scale, but by the hand, for me, I prefer.
I never checked that.
He
The
never,
parameters is there.
yes, he never checked that, because his force in the arms, in the hand, is way bigger than mine. But when I struggle to bend, then we always tune the swords more on the softer side, because he says, no, for me it's okay. And I say, no, it's not.
Well, you have to understand that sometimes you come across other sources or other producers, and sometimes they are softer than ours, sometimes they are not. And I think, okay, these that are stiffer than, well, the average that we produce, they are accepted. But I don't mean in every kind of tournament, but in the most. So yes. I think, why should I make something that could be more easily bent and so not appreciated by my customers, just on the behave or the safety? Well, this answers itself. It's for the sake of the safety, because I can do something that's stiffer. It's very
it's easier. It's easier. Absolutely.
But you always think that your armor, your HEMA gear will protect you, but this is not correct.
There's a body behind the HEMA gear. Yeah, there's a body.
And if you have a 1.7 kilogram long sword thrusting at your face, or even cutting very with its vertical, for example, well, sometimes I've seen head cracking.
Yeah,
I've seen them.
Yes.
I've seen noses breaking.
Yes,
but even with rapiers, not with long swords. So I would like to say that
the softer the better.
No, not the softer the better. You have to try to have a balance between the
bind action,
the bind action and the flexibility.
Yeah.
And I would like to make the struggle altogether, other producers, to have a way of checking the flexibility. that would be a parameter in every single tournament, where you define it and you standardize this, you have done a huge step forward for this. Otherwise, every time we say, okay, my blade flexed on 12 kilograms. Of what?
Of what?
Of what? How do you apply pressure? On what scale you are measuring it?
For example, we don't measure the pressure of the sword by applying the force from the pommel, but we take the guard and push it on the ground, on the scale, of course. We have
we have developed the system.
Yes, to go in depth about this, there's a link, there's a page dedicated on our website. But to the end of this conversation, the fact is that we should absolutely find a way, a common way to express these parameters in the among craftspeople, among swordsmiths around.
And even for the clubs,
yeah,
it's crucial.
The same, yeah.
Because then, when you have tournaments, you can be regulated and don't have personalities like, okay, I can handle this, or I can, well, this is flexible enough for me, and bullshit like this. It's very risky for all.
Yeah, we've had this discussion before of how to test this for tournaments, and it's a little bit of an issue.
Sometimes
let's move on to the next question, maybe.
Yeah.
No, because this is a question that can be discussed for hours and hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next one would be, if you have one product that you are particularly proud of, what would it be?
Oh,
there are a lot.
Well,
one.
I have one. But,
mostly.
She's the designer, so she speaks first.
Mostly, I think that some of the projects in the Armeria collection are some of the projects we are mostly proud of. Surely, the first Armeria swords we made some years ago, like the Duca di Milano, the Bella Dama. These were great efforts. And these are still a very something like a milestone in some way. We recently made a very interesting job for the Klingen Museum in Solingen for the new exhibition at the museum. We had the chance to take the measurements of a Dussac, and with a complex hilt, and then we had to remake it, but by making a little bit of scaling in the cage of the Dussac, because it had to allow many hands to enter in the cage, of course. So also taking a museum object and bring it to the modern reality, that's another kind of milestone. Also working with the museum, it's something that we are always proud to do. So I think that these are some of the most interesting works. Also the siren.
Yeah, you are
there are lots of them.
Talking about the Armeria, but
yes.
For me, the important things in the production of not just the replicas, but of the standards. The idea of the standards for me is something that is crucial. And if I have to say something that I am most proud of, is the narrow blade of the side sword, because it has been something that has been real, the standards for our side swords from the 2017 to nowadays. So it has 8 years lifespan, and still we haven't changed or tweaked that in a serious manner. So it means that it was born with the good intentions and it has been enhanced during the year. But this is the success that I'm proud of.
Very nice. The next question is one of our club members being a little bit cheeky. Can we expect you to enter in any of Dublin HEMA Club's tournaments or events in the future?
But as sponsors or as
Well, you are already sponsoring Feden and Yashko.
No.
So I suppose as competitors.
I don't
We still
think
have
so.
some tickets for Longsword A, so
I can be there, maybe as I did some years
Yes.
past. I was in, well, it was in England.
Yes, in England.
In England.
Oh, he definitely meant as competitor. So
Okay. No, then no. I'm sorry.
No, I'm too old. Really.
We are amateurs, not athletes.
I'm too old, and my back is too bad. Really, I'm not a serious fencer anymore.
We have a lot of people who are feeling kind of creaky and who are still competing. HEMA is for everyone.
Yeah.
Surely. It is, but if you have to go in this meeting at the next morning.
We also have amazing workshops on the Sunday. So we also sell workshop only tickets. So if you just want to come for the workshops on Sunday, you're also welcome. Anyway,
that could be nice. Really?
They are real. We have a full program. You can check out our social media. We have shared the program for the workshops. Anyway, not too much self-advertising. So I already told that the recording will be posted, but there was a question if the slides for the presentation will be shared.
Yes, absolutely. I can send it to you, or even I can send a link. I don't know.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I can share it on our social media and tag you.
Sure.
Great.
Cool.
Great.
And if once you post the recording, just tag us and then we will share it too.
Yeah.
No problem.
Cool. And yeah, I think that's all the questions there. So thank you for answering the question. And Ivan agrees that safety and some standardization is definitely needed. Well, thank you both so much for your time. Thanks to everyone who was here. Anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up for today?
We shared a lot.
But maybe.
but anyway, if anyone wants to write to us and ask questions, even after the presentation of today, we are very glad to respond to the emails. Absolutely.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Have a nice afternoon, and maybe we can repeat something similar in the future. And maybe we'll see you in October in Ireland.
Yeah. It would be lovely.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.